Welcome to Under's Car Reviews. My name is Eric and this is the brand new Volkswagen ID Bus. This is what happens when you let the engineers, designers and so on at Volkswagen do what they want to do. When you let them loose, basically. And I think that that's exactly what Volkswagen needs right now. This is the breath of fresh air that will catapult Volkswagen into the future with their electric vehicles. Design-wise, this is unlike anything that I've seen Volkswagen done previously, at least from a production car standpoint, because this is just so cool. This is the car that I've driven that has had the most amount of looks. People take pictures, children point, elderly people point, everyone points and looks. Very boxy, it looks kind of like a toy car, especially when you look at the profile. Very short rear, but there's a reason for that. The bottom plate, the MEB platform, is the same as in the Volkswagen ID4, for example, but the wheelbase has been extended to the edges of the cars. And because the car is rear-wheel drive, a super impressive turning radius. The car costs from 50,000 euros. The battery is 77 kilowatt hour and is supposed to give this car a range of 422 kilometers. But it is winter now, and I'll talk later about how that affects the range here. The power is 200 horsepower, so not the fastest car, but that's not really what this car is about then. This car has the extra option paint package to make this two-tone. This is yellow, there's green and some other colors. Orange I think is as well. Let's open the rear tailgate up. So with the key, these buttons open up the rear tailgate and these buttons open up the automatic side doors. But let's check out the rear luggage first. And you can see this cool detail of the profile of the ID Bus. This car comes extra with the towing hook, and you can tow up to 1000 kilos. The rear storage is over 1000 liters, and of course you can fold down the rear seat and you can fold down the rear seats flat. Let's open up the side door. Completely automated. Can control it both through the key and inside, and of course on the handle as well. I sit so comfortably here. A lot of knee space, a decent amount of lower thigh support, and all in all very spacious. You can move the seat both front and back. There's a bar underneath the chair. And you can also change the inclination of the bench as well. A little cool design feature. This armrest kind of thingy can remove it completely by pressing this button to make for even more storage. And there's a little storage area both in the front and in the rear. I forgot to mention that the maximum charging speed of 170 kilowatts, so it goes from 5% to 80% in about 30 minutes. It is obvious that this interior is unlike any other Volkswagen. Just so cool, so different. Steering wheel is the same as in our current Volkswagen models, which means you have haptic feedback, no buttons. To be fair, they do work, but I would rather have normal buttons, and I think Volkswagen will revert to them in future models. They do work though. Before, gear shift selector was up here, and people complained that it was a bit too far away for them to reach it, so now it's just behind the steering wheel and it is easy to reach. But I would rather have forward, instead of having to twist it up to go into drive, twist it back to go into reverse. I'd rather have you click it forward like a hinge to go forward or back to go reverse. Much more intuitive, I think. Digital gauge cluster, if you call it that, has been revised just slightly to give you a bit more information. So on the right here I have how far I've driven, my average consumption, so on and so forth, and I can change the views as well. And if I navigate, there will be a choice of that in the digital gauge cluster as well, to have a view of that. The infotainment system is also the same as in other Volkswagen models. I think it's super easy to use and it doesn't need to be more complex than it is. Super responsive. Takes some time, especially when you start it. It can be quite laggy, but once it's started, fairly responsive. Nothing to really complain about there. People have complained, I've also complained about controlling the temperature, because they don't light up, so when it gets dark you won't be able to see it, but you slide it up and slide it down. You can press this left side and that will switch you into the controls for the air condition. There's some different driving modes. There's Eco, Comfort, Sport and Individual. For the most amount of my time, I mean Eco and Comfort. Sport is not really necessary in this car. There's one extra feature before we start driving, that is a light bar here. You won't be able to see it, but if you start to navigate and you might have to change lane to the left lane, there will be a light that will whoosh, slide to the left or to the right, depending on where you need to drive. And if you're starting to get close to a car, it will also warn you. It feels like a car. Of course, it does feel a bit heavy, but the suspension, the chassis, very, very finely tuned to feel like a car. The steering is super, super light. It's been well insulated. There's hardly any vibration that comes through either the steering wheel or the seat. And all in all, a super impressive driving experience. The lane assist though, Volkswagen. The bar standard works so well. Even when it starts to rain a bit, it can handle its own. Of course, there is a limit to what an electronic driving aid with the lane assist can do when the lines start to become when you can't see the lines. But super impressive, smooth, active cruise control. Doesn't accelerate too hard or decelerate too hard, and keeps me within the lines. Just an amazing system. Well calibrated, the bar standard. Since it is so big and you sit quite high up, and not the roofline but where the side windows start is quite high up, so you really have to look before you change, and I mean a lot. Volkswagen claims 422 kilometers of range. When I fully charge this car, I have about 310 kilometers, and I think that has been the same story with other electric vehicles that I have tested. That's the story in cold winter climates. But it does mean that I have 300 kilometers of range, which, even though I have a quite quick charging speed, the depletion of the battery and the range goes very quickly. You can see it almost in real time, and that is a bit stressful. 200 horsepower is more than plenty for this type of car. Of course, it's always nice to have some power, but with the amount of torque that this car has, you never feel like this car lacks power. And even though this car is not made for it, it has a sport mode, which means that we need to take it on the customary B-road test. And 265 wide rear tires, low center of gravity because of the batteries. Of course, not the most peppy. I mean, it's peppy, but the power is there to make it accelerate to the desired speed, not to be, you know, sporty like I'm driving now. But I'm super surprised that how well balanced it is. Of course, some understeer when you start to push it. Winter tires, mind you. Brakes are fairly easy to judge. I don't really like the action of the braking pedal, feels a bit notchy. Super compliant, yet not too soft to lean in the bends. It's a van. But with the electrification and the MEB platform and Volkswagen's engineering know-how, they made a van feel like a car. Is it for that big family? Is it for that adrenaline junkie that wants to take his kayak, his off-road bike, whatever? Is it for driving in the city? I can see that the ID. Buzz is aimed towards a lot of different customers. Of course it is expensive, and with the electrification of the ID. Buzz, meaning not the best range, but with a really good charging speed, it has some viability. And with the future giving you longer range, better charging speeds, lower prices, and so on and so forth, I can see a future for the ID. Buzz. I think the ID. Buzz is what Volkswagen needs to do. It's different, it's cool, and it makes people talk about Volkswagen. I think the ID. Buzz is the next step in the electrification of Volkswagen, and I can't wait to see what they will do in the future. That's my final conclusion of the Volkswagen ID. Buzz.